and our other things. So welcome everyone to our session on structured literacy instruction for students with dyslexia and others who struggle to read and write. I know it's a really long title. It was not intentional, did not originally have dyslexia on it, and then I put it on so that when people are searching in PD Enroller for my classes, they can just put in one word and find everything, regardless of whether or not it's that specific. So as people are coming in, I'm going to put our poll up and see whether or not we have anybody new with us today. And I'll just leave that up for a moment as I go through some of the introductory things so that I can see if there's anybody new we can need to slow down. And I think that in our chatting, I did not put up my ability to my speaker notes so that I can advance without having to put those over. So yes, we do have somebody new. Thank you for sharing that. That is also important for information. I should also ask whether or not you've had any classes with me, because that will influence how quickly or slowly we go in through all the introductory things. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll because we know we have at least one person new. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm going to continue to put the attendance link into the chat box as we start through. We do have a recognition that we start off with in all of our classes is a land acknowledgement. And this is a new one I got from my agency that I like. I really like that picture, the drawing. And I like some of the words too as well, just the humbly responsible and recognition of our lands. And so I just wanted to kind of share this as a different approach to our land acknowledgement. If you'd like to add in where you are, we invite that, as we invite accountability and partnership. And here are some, I'll also put on some references and resources for us. If you don't know where you are, here's a native land maps too for us. And until Nina gets here, I will ask that you give me some grace as I'm juggling all the different pieces. We also recognize that acknowledgement is but a first step. It does not stand in for relationship and action, but it can begin to point toward deeper possibilities for decolonizing relationships with people and place. We also recognize and acknowledge the pain and trauma from over 400 years of racism in the United States, and pledge to stand with our communities of color, especially those who identify as and or are categorized as African American. We acknowledge the intersectionality of those who identify both as persons of color and individuals with disabilities. And we are committed to centering our work to dismantling systemic racism and disrupting ableist structures. So for those of you who are new, these are the guideposts that I like to use to help indicate, thank you, Majida, to indicate to help us out, to give us some visual reminders as we progress with each other. So when you see that handout, I will show you how to approach those and find those. Those are things you can print out, you can share widely. Everything I give you, you can share widely, but the handouts are ADA accessible, which means you can read them with an e-reader. Activities will be something for you to do and engage with. Last time I thought you guys are a great group. We can dive into the phonemes in small groups. This time, maybe we'll do some more whole group rather than small groups. So, I kind of try to go back and forth between whole and small groups so that I make sure that everyone gets enough practice, at the same time doesn't feel overwhelmed and has the support they need. So we try to alternate between those, and please let me know what your needs are as we progress. So that's with the activities. The time to reflect, I think, is really crucial for us to process and kind of verbalize it. We verbalize to internalize, and this is part of the important process. This gives you an opportunity to think deeply and think about how this applies to your work. And then, of course, practical strategies are those that you can walk off with and incorporate every day into your teaching. And then, of course, resources are things where you can look for more information. So the practical strategy here is that one way that we can support our students with dyslexia is by having these visual reminders. Frankly, it helps for all of our kids, is to have these visual cues. It gives them directions, it gives them reminders, and frankly, it helps us too. Thank you for helping out with Missy on reposting the attendance link. Very appreciated. Okay, toward that end, as we help each other out, here are some reminders or Zoom tips. We do ask that you change your Zoom name so it reflects where you're from. See, most everyone has already done that for us. If you have not, you can go to your participants list. Up by your name, it says more, rename, and you can rename yourself there. You can also hide your self view. I don't know if that's accessible there, or when you look at your picture, up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little blue box with 3 white dots, and you can rename there. You can also hide self view if that isn't hiding already. The mute button is there on the left-hand side of your toolbar, and that we do invite you to keep it. You can keep that mute off if there are no background noises behind you, and we just ask you to turn it on if you need to sneeze, talk, whatever, if there's something, dog barking behind you. These filters are pretty good, but sometimes there'll be some things that are distracting. Okay, the reactions button is where we ask you to use the raised hand option, because unless you are June, Amanda, Pamela, Bettina, Vicky, or Carolyn, I can't see you. So those 6 people could raise your hand virtually like this, but everyone else, please use your raised hand so that you can jump into the conversation and contribute. You can also just unmute, but if there's more than one person unmuting at once, you can use the raised hand to create like a line or a list of priorities. I accidentally hit the toolbar, so we have our other pieces, view options, where you can put the pictures on the top or along the side. You can move things back and forth. That's also where you'll find the annotation toolbar. And just as a reminder, we use that button format to change colors of what we are writing with or drawing with. So speaking of annotations, you can start interacting here. I should put my little interaction and opportunity for engagement here. These are the teaching and learning beliefs of my agency. And yes, I'm speaking quickly. This is the intro stuff. We want to get through it quickly to everything else, right? But I do also want to highlight some things that are important so that you understand what brings me to this work and what I bring. You might have noticed that this one's a little bit different. I keep trying to change things and forgetting which ones I've changed, which one I haven't. While I totally agree on this importance of building relationships with our students, I've taken this off of some versions because these relationships with each other are also important. There are relationships with our interventionists, with our SLPs, our school psychs, our paraprofessionals, our administrators, our communities, our families. All those relationships are really crucial and key to impacting positive change. So this is one that really stands out to me, as well as the active engagement, the supported professional development so that we continue to learn and help each other, and of course, the growth mindset. So if you want to take a moment to either stamp or add into the chat box something that frames or something that speaks to you from this, or that kind of is driving your thoughts today as you're with us. And I'll clear my things off there for you. Always learning, aren't we? Thank you. Yes, you are the most important piece in that classroom. Whoever's tried with whoever put that on, the quality teacher. You and what your knowledge, your skills, that makes the biggest difference in the classroom. I mean, the curriculum's a useful tool, but it's really you who makes that biggest difference. And frankly, it's like, yes, it's the active engagement piece that I think is most important of this one. The curriculum helps, but you're the one who makes sure that it's actively engaging, aren't you? Thank you, everyone. I'll close that off and clear it off in about 5 more seconds. All right, thanks for the contributions. Oh, someone just reminded me I should put the captions on and show them for the recording. So there we go. I'll show the captions. All right, clearing that off. We also have our I used to call norms. Thank you, Deborah. For how we work with each other today. Oh, I need to get those hearts back into the people. What we bring to our engagement with each other. I think it's very important that we listen. That's the refrain from judgment. We share openly, we contribute, that we are engaged. That's one of the reasons why I like to have activities and opportunities to stamp anytime. You don't have to wait for an invitation. If you want to stamp and engage that way, that's something that I think is one way to join in and contribute to the conversation, is throw in a stamp, put a question mark, use your text if you want to just kind of say, something that you want to draw attention to. Feel free in any way to engage with us, because I think that is definitely a key piece of learning, is through our engagement. And then, of course, down in that lower right-hand corner, we want to make sure that we give ourselves and each other grace, because we have lots of things going on in our lives. It looks like we have a dog who's joining us right behind you, Vicki. So hence, this is real life. We're humans. We take care of our needs. So thank you for joining for as much as you can. So these are the goals of the session. Just a few things and reminders of what we're approaching on. We're looking at the application of our application of our understanding of explicit literacy instruction. And I do try to share with you all kinds of resources that I find. One of the things that June and I were chatting about this morning is speaking of explicit instruction. I love how I said this morning. That's not what I meant. But this afternoon, I found a great series of infographics, I suppose you'd call them, and we'll put in the Dropbox for you, on explicit instruction. Just beautiful resources based on Anita Archer's explicit literacy. What's it called? Explicit Instruction, I think is the name of her book. Yes, Explicit Instruction, Effective and Efficient Teaching by Anita Archer. So I haven't yet put this on any of my resources, but you're going to be getting it first. So that's into the chat box for you. And Elena, let's get you that attendance link too. Let me put that in. There you go. Okay, so we're talking about explicit instruction because that's what some of our kids absolutely need, especially our kids with dyslexia. And some of those, Amanda, you were asking about those hiders. Let's make sure they get the instruction they need. So we're going to be making sure that we have our knowledge of foundational elements of literacy, including phonology, which we talked about last time, orthography, etymology, morphology, all those ologies, those great study of words, syntax, semantics, and then how can we use that knowledge to support our students' reading growth. So this is the picture of where we've been last time, where we are, where we're going. And I'm just going to pause for a moment here. One, to acknowledge that phonology and phonemic awareness stuff that we did last time was kind of hard. And I have gotten some feedback back that maybe we should have done that whole group, which I usually do. I think last time I thought sometimes I mix it up. But at the same time, we want to stress the importance of understanding how those sounds are made in your mouth, because it's laying the groundwork for what we're doing today. Because if you don't know the sounds, then it's hard to connect them to the symbols. So that sound symbol connection is really crucial. So I'm just going to give you people a moment to kind of process and invite anyone who would like to orally ask a question or process verbally with the group something that's been on your mind since the last week. I mean, we even stayed a good 10, 15 minutes later talking about how to pronounce the sound of the letter R. I mean, this is not natural for us to think about, because frankly, if it weren't for text and reading and writing, we wouldn't need to think about those individual phonemes. We would just talk. But we pay attention to them because they are what's represented in print. So I'm going to stop for a moment and invite you to raise hand, unmute, and see if there's somebody who would like to question or verbally process. Anything that's been circling in your mind since last week? Everyone feeling good? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. I'll give you a moment. I'll grab the resource guide for you, where all the resources are that I share. And I will also put in the Jamboard. I think I put in already, but I'll grab it again. During the introductions time, we can see if there is anybody who hasn't yet contributed to our Jamboard. Remember, with the Jamboard, we can't have everyone going on at once, but you can go in if you haven't already to share with us where you're joining us from. And you can also look through the pictures and see where everyone is joining us from. I apologize that everything is going really slowly to the chits. That's what happens when you have too much going on, right? Okay, so let me put this back up and I will put the resources for you here into the chat box. And I'll go and grab the Jamboard and I will share a little bit, brief introduction so we can get to the content for those of you who haven't been with us in any of these sessions before. I always try to make things standaloneable enough, but of course it doesn't always work. So where to begin? I have been doing these classes for several years now. That's not the Jamboard. I think this is it. That doesn't look like the Jamboard. I'll just go grab it. So, oh, here it is in the notes. So I have been working with ESD 113 for 6.5 years now, almost 7. And before that, I was a professor of special education. Before that, I was a special education high school teacher, middle school teacher. But I started my career as an elementary school for kids with dyslexia in California. There's the Jamboard for us. So you can share where you're from. We have a map on frame 3. Frame 2, I think, is the parking lot for other references. My passion for literacy and literature really came out of a passion for grammar, believe it or not. I was a grammar geek and loved learning about languages. I loved learning French in high school. And this just became a love of linguistics. And then when I started at Chartwell, it opened my eyes to kids with dyslexia and how they're struggling with learning to read and write, but also how we can make learning language clear and logical and easy. I know that sounds crazy easy because this is huge. I mean, as Louisa Moat says, teaching reading is rocket science. But the more we distill it to what is common, and the more we learn about it, the clearer we can make it for our kids. And so that's what drives me, and that's what I invite you to join with me in some of this learning as we learn about how our language works. So I'm just going to pause for a moment, make sure everybody has access to choosing and looking into the Jamboard. I'll pull it up for us as well as any questions or things that are on your mind, and giving you a moment to look through and see who else is with us joining. Glad to see, so this gives me a moment to do so as well. Hi, Kim, where are you from? Kim Crowell. I'd love to. We'll have to work on the unmuting or putting it on, or maybe you could put it in the chat box so I can add it for you as well. So this is the parking lot. This is our map, and this is what the first one looks like. So thank you for those of you who are adding in to this one or to the map. We have a few things that we're engaging with today. All right. Thank you. Oh, Kim, did you get yourself unmuted?
There. Can you hear me?
I can. Where are you joining us?
From Kennewick.
Kennewick, thank you for joining.
Yeah.
I'll add that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so, whoops, I misspelled it, but we get the idea.
Yeah.
CH does, but not in that word.
Which?
It's not a Greek word. All right. So as we start, though, before I'm going to go on to the next slide, I'm going to give a little preface as to why I'm going to do what I'm about to do. And that is that on the first day, I asked all of the group who has taken some kind of simulation of reading disabilities. And the majority of you, I think 79%, said you had not. So while this is not a reading simulation we're about to do per se, I think it's an important element, particularly when we're going to talk today about sound symbol correspondences, for us to think about what we're looking at when we look at print. So I'm going to start with this image. I've often called this a visual perception simulation, because that truly is what it is. And my first question is, please do not put in the chat box what you know that this is if you've seen and done this before. If you've seen this picture, June, you're nodding your head. Have you done this before? So don't tell anybody what it is. If you've seen the movie Fat City by Rick Lavoie, you'll recognize this. It comes from him. And Fat City stands for fear, anxiety, and tension. It's old, but it's a good learning disability stimulation. So I'm seeing a lot of faces that are telling me you've never seen this before. And I can tell because they're trying to figure it out. So my first question is there anyone who has never seen this before who can tell me what this is a picture of? It is a photograph, really grainy, bad quality photograph. But June, you've seen this before. You know what this is. You can't unsee it, right? Yeah. Okay. Alessandra, have you seen it before?
No, I haven't seen it before.
Can you tell me what it's a picture of?
I think it's a child wearing a coat with a hood, looking at a distance. That's what I think.
Well, that's a new one. Thank you for your interpretation, Alessandra.
You're welcome.
Does somebody see something different?
It looks like a cat to me on the top right. Some kind of animal, that's the head. Then when I look on the other side, it looks like a foot, an animal's paw or something sticking out.
I get cats a lot too, and I'm sorry, Majida, because I know what it is. I cannot see that. Nor can I see the child, Alessandra. So how about someone else?
I feel like it's a turtle down on the bottom left, and like the turtle.
This is the best group. All right, so I'm going to now give you some. I'm going to give you some instruction. I'm going to tell you what it is. This is new. I've never seen so many animals. You guys are great. I'm seeing a duck, a bear, a raccoon. Wow, this is fun. So Shannon's got it. Shannon, have you seen this before? Shannon's right. This is a cow. This is a picture of a cow. Now, Shannon, I'd be curious your background, because there was one person who said it's a cow, and she said she grew up on a farm, so she saw that cow right away. So she brought some background knowledge to us, and I can see some of us are going, what are you talking about? That's not a cow. Let me help you. Now, do you see that cow?
No.
Now let's go back. Do you still see the cow?
No.
Okay, let me help you. Let me draw it here. Here's one ear. Here's the angle of the face. The nostril.
Oh.
Here's the other angle of the face, the ear, the top of the head, two eyes here. Now here's a nose angle here. And everyone's like, okay, now I see it, right? Go ahead, Alessandra.
No, I was focusing on the dark colors, the black. I was not focusing on the white. So that's why I didn't see the cow. Now I see it.
What we've done is we've
It
created
depends.
for that for you.
You know, it depends on which color you're focusing on. If you focus on the light colors, you will see the image. If you focus on the dark colors, you will see something else.
Let me help again for those of you who hadn't seen it. Do you see the outline of the cow? Now, do you see this here? And it's tricky to see, but notice I didn't change this. Now you see it. So June, you saw that cow right away, right? Because you'd seen this before. I can't see anything but the cow, because that's what my brain, I have made meaning of this, just like when we teach reading. And actually this is not a good, it's a good example of when I use the word visual. I'll put that up, because normally, remember, we teach kids that this says v, it's, oh. But when you put it together, notice how I'm going to be teaching, we're going to talk about the flexibility of these letters and the sound connections. Now, but visal doesn't work, does it? So in this case, I'm going to have to flex that to make it visual. And that, remember last week we talked about, and people are like, what on earth is? There was the in visual. So we've got that SU being a, or it could be a like in sugar. We have to flex it and play with that sound to get to the right sound for this. But we have meaning for visual, so this isn't an issue for us. Just like when we see this cow, we have meaning for it, so it's something we recognize right away. Or those of us who had seen it. Thanks, Nina. I'll make you co-host. I have to find you first. How do I do that? Welcome, Nina. Do you want to introduce yourself to the group real quickly while I find you and make you co-host?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Nina Sotomayor, and I am one of the literacy supports for BSD 114 and for the state of Washington. And I'm just supporting today as you guys engage through your PD. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Nina. We were just doing the visual simulation. I think you've done this one, haven't you?
Yes, and I'm glad that you guys had such an engaging conversation.
So this is this group's responses, these 76 of the 55 of you, and yes, I can do math. So we have some people who contributed to the survey who are not here with us today. Looks like we're a bit stronger in this category, but we also have a steady 5 people in each of the categories, 1, 2, and 3. So I think this is crucial to keep in mind that we have a heterogeneous group. And that's one of the reasons why we put you into heterogeneous and mixed breakout rooms so that we can learn from each other and we can build upon each other's strengths. So one of the places we're going to start with is remembering the phonological awareness that we talked about last week, because this lays the foundation for our understanding of speech to understand print. So remember the phonological awareness, our early, our basic, and our proficient levels that our kids should get through by the end of 3rd grade. I'm say should, doesn't always. We've got plenty of our high schoolers who are still working on their proficiency there. Then now we're going to move to, I'm going to ask that you get out your handout if you printed it out of this table. I'm going to take us there if you haven't printed it so you can see how to get there. So you remember we have our explicit literacy instruction resources. And Nina, I did put them in the chat box for those people who haven't gotten them. I'll make credit. You have access to this, Nina, right? You could grab it for people. I'll put it in their chat box for us.
Thank you.
Oh, looks like we need the attendance link too. Do you have that, Nina?
I do not. Let me see if I can find it.
It's in the top for us. There you go. Now you do. Okay, so we are on this Google Doc and we're going to click the handouts link, the tiny URL, tinyurl.com dyslexia 101 handouts. And the table that I was referring to is the David Kilpatrick table. It's called Kilpatrick. Here it is, Kilpatrick chart. So what we were just looking at are the levels of phonological awareness. That's here on the left-hand side of the table. Now we're going to move to the right-hand side and how this is developed, how the influences, the phonological development influences the reading development. So on that right-hand side of the table, it looks like this. I'm going to give you a little bit more than what we saw on that table. And because when we're talking about letter sound knowledge, we're talking about both the letter names and the letter forms. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today as we connect those letter names and the letter sounds is as you incorporate the form and as you incorporate thinking about how those are made in the mouth. Remember, we talked about that last week. And as you incorporate the handwriting element, you're creating more connections in the brain so that students remember those letter sound connections. So one of the things that I was taught to do at Chartwell is when I would teach the letter names and forms, we would first start with the letter H, and then as soon as we start paying attention to the sounds, when you see this card, you're going to tell me the letter. So you're going to say it as you make it, but then you're also going to tell me the keyword, which I don't have the H behind me. I have AB. Oh, do I still have my background up? Do I have my background up? I do. Okay, thank you. I only have A, B, and C, but I do have a card for an H card so that when you see this card, you're going to tell me the name, you're going to make it, and you're also going to tell me the keyword because that's going to help you unlock the sound. So H, house, A, apple, B, bulb. C, I want to change off of cake and make cat because you have here the K, the letter K in the beginning of cake, but I didn't make those cards. So that's the letter sound knowledge piece, is we're connecting those letters and those letter sounds. Did you want to add something, Nina? Okay, just checking on you. I thought I saw you reaching for the unmute. Because you just got to stop me.
No, I was just like loving the fact that we're engaging everyone in this work right now. So that was it.
Awesome. Okay, so you see that letter sound knowledge that develops, as that develops, it leads to my ability to convert those letters that I see into the sounds that those letters represent. and I can blend them to make words. So we call that phonic decoding. In other words, a lot of people call that reading, but that's just the decoding part of reading. That's figuring out what those letters represent and sticking them together. The next piece, though, to remember them is through the process that we call orthographic mapping. So I'm going to pause for a moment and get us to a new poll. How do I do that? I don't want to, I guess I have to share results to stop to get to the new poll. Back, here we go. Orthographic mapping. I'm going to launch this poll and ask you, for those of you who cannot access the poll for some interesting reason, whatever device you're on, it is asking, what is your familiarity with this term, orthographic mapping? Never heard of it. I've heard of the term, but I'm not sure what it means. I have a vague concept of the idea, but don't ask me to explain it. Or I'm comfortable with the term, but I could always learn more. We'll give you a moment with that. And Nina, you know, I need, you're my time watcher. All right, we have over 80%, so I'll give you another 10 seconds. We're getting close to everyone. And 5, 4, 3, that number's not changing. So I think that everyone who can contribute and wanted to contribute has contributed. Let's end poll and share those results. You see we have extremely heterogeneous group. It's almost a normal curve there. Some people, we have 23% never heard of it. 13% pretty comfortable with that term. And we have pretty close to in the middle of half and half of the rest. Heard of it, have a vague idea of the concept. So we're going to talk a little bit about orthographic mapping because this is the process that goes on implicitly for many of our learners. It goes on behind the scenes in our brain that helps us remember words and create a memory for words. This is why we need that advanced phonological awareness, when we need phonemic proficiency, is because not only am I going to segment the sounds of those blended words, but I'm going to reflect upon what they're represented by in the print, and then think about this relationship between the speech and the print. So I have a way of demonstrating what I mean by this. So this orthographic mapping, this is going to be the same process if it's what I'm going to call a green word on the left or a yellow word, the one in the middle, the one on the right. You'll see what I mean by those green and yellow in a bit. So first off, I'm going to divide this as best I can and illustrate for you that this is what the kid sees. This is what the kid says. And then we're going to start there. This is the phonic decoding part. So they see this word. Let me get my thing here. This is this top row. This is what they see. And then they're going to sound it out letter by letter if they need to translate it to this word. So in this case, the word is sit. Maybe they needed to decode it. Maybe they could just instantly read it. This one, if they need to decode, they're going to recognize that the I consonant E represents the long I. So they're recognizing that this is I, and they blend it together and make sight. And they recognize IGH says I, represents I. And then they blend this together, sight, to make sight. So these are both sight and this is sit. So that's the phonic decoding part of the top. Now, next, the orthographic mapping is to do the opposite process. So this is again what they say, and this is what they see. So I'm going to go explicit for those kids who need this. And the explicit process is, okay, thinking back. What were the sounds in that word I read? I read the word sit. Let's segment out those sounds. It. Now, how do I represent each sound? The S is represented by an S, the I by an I, and the T by a T. So this is helping me then make that connection between the symbol and the sound. This is one of the things I want to make clear is that this is a process. It's not a skill or a form of curriculum. This is a cognitive task in which students store words in their long-term memory. I want to illustrate, no, this is the same process regardless of the complexity of that sound symbol correspondence. So on this one, I've noticed this is the same sound, sight and sight, and the T are easy, right? But now I have to think about what my knowledge of those words and the meaning to recognize if it's going to be the I consonant E as it is here, or the IGH as it is here. So now it comes to play. I could sound those out and figure out, easy to sound those out. They're both sight. But to remember the spellings of them, I have to come in and with my meaning and understanding what those mean. The words, the one in the middle, that's a place. And that one on the right, the sight is what I do with my eyes. That was an amazing sight. It could be either one. If it was something I saw, that's with my eyes. If it was a place, that's the one in the middle. So it's my understanding of meaning that helps me differentiate between those homonyms. We're going to give you a opportunity to process this just briefly and very soon. But I want to illustrate for you, though, how these two processes support and affect each other and how we get to that orthographic mapping piece. So one of the things we talked about last week, whoops, wrong way, is the fact, and this is a logical thing, you would think that obviously early leads to basic, basic leads to advanced. The same thing on the right-hand side with these reading development pieces. I need to be able to understand the letter names and the letter sounds in order to read with them, right? To translate those, the print to the sounds, blend them together to read. That's the phonic decoding, which I need to be able to do in order to remember the words. That's the orthographic mapping piece. And one of the things that it may also seem logical sense is that I have to be able to rhyme and play with alliteration in order to pay attention to those letter names and letter sounds. And my basic phonemic awareness supports my ability to then blend those words together, because my basic is my blending and my segmenting. But then my advanced phonemic awareness supports my orthographic mapping. That's my phonemic proficiency when I change. Remember, we changed clash to crash by changing just one sound, or fit to fat, or fit to fin. Those are those attention to those individual sounds and how I can change them. But once we start instruction on our letter sound knowledge, that also supports my ability to recognize and blend and manipulate those sounds. And once I start reading and putting those together and blending them, I start paying attention to and being able to manipulate them by adding them and changing them and doing those adding, changing, and moving them around. So that of course leads to my orthographic mapping, which is the remembering piece. And this is the piece that is my automatic recognition. That's what I'm trying to do that's my goal, is the automatic recognition, so that my kids don't have to slowly and laboriously sound out words. They can recognize them automatically, right? So I want to give out you one more piece on that automatic recognition before we go into our breakouts that you can start setting up, Nina. So this is a slide I made to, I think, clearly help, I hope, illustrate the importance of that orthographic mapping. So this first piece here, we recognize that because, I mean, those of us who recognize that reading doesn't come naturally, that by just seeing me read to you, you have no idea all the things that are going in my brain. And if I'm just showing you words as I'm reading to you, that seeing those words and hearing them simultaneously, this is not going to lead to automatic word recognition. There's a lot more that needs to go through behind the brain, in the brain and behind this. So then the next piece that we think is that, okay, if I sound out that word, and I see a lot of people who say that sounding out these words is going to lead to automatic word recognition. I will say it's an important step, but it is not the end all, and it is not the only thing. If you are only just sounding out those words, you may or may not be getting to that automatic word recognition. You have to include the orthographic mapping piece. So whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, so that many of our strong readers, remember when we had that ladder of reading, we had the green up at the top and the red at the bottom. Those kids up in the green are doing the orthographic mapping without realizing it. For those kids out in the red, they're going to need our support. They're going to need us help them think about what are the ways that that sound is represented in print, and then how can we make sure that we get them remembering that. That may take a bit more work on that. So again, as before, if there are any slides that you'd like me to give you to show you for your discussion, as you're in a discussion, please let me know. I'd be happy to do so. We're going to pause the recording now and give you a moment to think about this process of orthographic mapping and to chat with your colleagues about what does this imply to you and what does this mean? And as we just kind of start with this concept, is this a new concept that what I was just sharing with you on this slide about how we get to automatic word recognition? I'm not going to talk about the importance of automatic word recognition because I'm sure you do. That's why you're here, right? Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording. Nina, are we ready to go into breakout rooms? Why in a moment. Okay, let's hear from a couple of groups. Thank you, Amanda, for putting into a resource into the chat box, and we'll have to add it to our resource list. Two books. Amanda, do you want to share what you were talking about, or are we just saying, these are fun books?
Oh, we were just talking about like how sometimes having background information or like having just had an experience, just even so that you're not getting to that point where your mind is like blown by the fact that sight and sight can sound the same but be spelled differently. And also like, because sometimes I feel like kids can only handle so many things, so they're still focused on like what is going on, and then they've totally missed the whole rest of the lesson about it, right? And so like we were talking, especially with younger ones, like how just even introducing a book like Dear Dear or Mirror Mirror like gives them that kind of like that little bit of a base that they can then build off of. So that's what we were talking about.
Thank you, Amanda. I am confused on mirror, mirror. There's two different meanings of mirror?
No, it's a book of reverse poems.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not two different meanings, but
I
that's
get
the
it.
concept. You can look at it later.
I will. I'll jump into it. How about another group who would like to share some of your conversation?
I can share some of the stuff I was blabbing at in the group. I think so. What I was thinking and kind of talking about was the idea of maybe what this is but I'm feeling like maybe not so much now. So it's like you learn a word, there's some spelling, and then you've got to if you want to be able to have that as a sight word, you're recording that word in your long-term memory. And part of it is a visual, I think it's a visual memory, but it's also a sound memory.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking of this orthographic memory mapping as being a process of binding a visual memory to a sound memory. Is that okay?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. And this is, I love that you got there without me being explicit about that. Because when I have more time, one of the things, and we talk about a full day on sound symbol correspondences, one of the things that we talk about is that the memory we use for remembering words is our orthographic memory, which means are connecting the symbol and the sound. That without the sound, we're going to have a much harder time remembering it. And this is one of the reasons why it is harder for people who are deaf to remember words, because they are lacking that sound element. And so you have a stronger connection in your brain when you've got the sound and the visual connecting together, which is exactly what you're talking about, Christopher. So,
and then would it be accurate that if we expand that a little bit and say, so then what associations do we have with that word when we're talking about memory? So I think about the word toast. And so toast, if you say the word toast, I map it to butter. I think butter when I hear the word toast, but I also, there's a smell memory that I associate with toast. And that the idea of the more connections you can make between the word toast, both as a visual piece, as a sound piece, but maybe an olfactory and knowledge of the word, all of those things come into play for helping to make these things stick in our memory.
Exactly. Remember when we had that triangle, I was trying to quickly find it, of the sound, the visual form at the top, and we have the sounds and we have the meaning. That's exactly what you're saying. Is I think about all the ways I know meaning of like, for example, toast. Or one thing that you didn't think about is when I toast somebody and say congratulations. So I have the more multiple meanings I have, the more connections I'm making in my brain, and the stronger connections, the more likely I'm going to remember it. So yes, thank you, Christopher. How about one more group before we move on? I hope you have good conversations. Okay, well, the invitation's there. All right, Deborah, I see a hand raised. I'm going to find you. There you are.
There we go. I'm kind of going off of what I can't see his name, Christopher was just saying, is I always like to try and find multiple sensory ways. So you're getting the sound and the visual, even if it's touching, putting those letters together. I'm a believer in as many sensories as you can get, because you don't know exactly what that student's way of learning is. Is that like a good way? I mean,
Tremendously. If we think of the more, we used to say multisensory. Now people are saying multimodal, and it's really different modes of. To me, it's the same thing. If you're using multiple senses, if you're seeing your multiple modes of connecting, you're using your eyes, your ears, your mouth, your writing hand. You're connecting this letter, this sound, H, house. I'm making that and making a connection. And I will tell you, the very first time I did a Slingerland training, there was a kid at the pocket chart, and he's looking at all the letters, and he's trying to spell a word. And I can't remember what sound it was. Let's just say it was. And he didn't have any digraphs, so PH wasn't on there, but he's just having to look at the letters, and he's trying to remember which one made the sound. He's looking at the letters and looking at the letters. Teacher said, put your arm up, you'll know. And soon as that arm went out, F fish, he got it.
okay.
It was a connection, because he'd been practicing F fish.
Oh, okay.
That clicked for him. So yes,
Yeah.
bring those pieces together.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm old fashioned. I say multi-sensory still.
Well, one of the things that I do with my students when we practice this, and this is with middle schools and high schoolers as well, is that engaging them through the hand process. So for example, if it was an elementary school student and we're doing cat, act, cat, act, cat. And so just like having them utilize their hand motions as well. And so even thinking about vocabulary, how sometimes we attach a hand motion to a vocabulary we're learning, like rolling. The car was rolling down the street, how that can help re-engage our brain as we're learning these new words. So
Exactly. When you look at how much we're using our different modalities, exactly. And
I do use that with my hand, have them use their hands. I use the Kilpatrick. And okay, what are the syllables? How many syllables? And then have them say counting the syllables and saying the sounds.
And you'll find a lot of really great resources for doing this in our resources list. And in fact, one of my favorites I'll point out to you, it's also because I always like to share with you free stuff, is the one from Really Great Reading. So I'm going to jump down to our sound symbol correspondence section. And you'll find, where's the one by Really Great Reading? My brain is not going fast enough on this. Fine, we'll do this one. I love this blending board.
It's under letter and sound block tiles.
Thank you. It's really bold. Whoever that was helping me out. So I'm just going to do the mouse input where just what we were saying is let me bring down some basic tiles, and let's use the word Nina gave us with cat. I can make and now I'm going to bring down the sound, the letters that spell that, the C for the k and the A for the a and the T for the t. And this is free. I'll put it in the chat box for you, so you can, if you want to just jump today and don't have to remember what it was called. Just a way that you can be bringing in that into engaging, and oops, I gave that directly to someone rather than everyone. Thank you.
Just so you guys, if you think about if you're elementary, if you have counters in your classroom, those little math counters, the little round circle clears, that's what I would use as well. So you can have the kiddos drag them down. So you have another piece and you already have that probably in your classroom.
Exactly. And this is all what we're talking about, is building that alphabetic principle knowledge. And one of the things I've trying to change the color here, but I cannot stress this enough, so I added a new slide on the next slide, is that the most important thing we teach our kids is that letters we see and letter patterns represent the sounds of spoken language in an imperfect yet predictable way. Imperfect and predictable. And I don't yet know the right conjunction to have there. But the important thing is that it's imperfect. We don't write butter with D's, we write them with T's, and yet it's predictable. When you have butter, that sound in the middle of the word is going to be those two T's. So we look at the sequence by which this is usually developing, and this is a developing learner. Usually we learn letter names first, because how many times you talk with kids, small children, they learn the alphabet song, they learn ABCDs. They may not recognize that those are each individual thing. They may think elemento is one word, but then we get them to slow down and we help them connect that A to the letter, the form. Then on the shapes, those are the forms, and then we bring in the sounds. There are programs who do the sounds before the names, because really it's the sounds they most and crucially need. But I was taught to do that both, in that, for example, when I said, this is not a, this is an H, it's what we call it, it's the label for it. We'll talk a little bit later, and hopefully I might not have time, that the letter name is the most predictable. Let me try this again. It is the only stable unit of all of our letters. They all have only one name. Many of them have multiple shapes. You think about how, we've got the upper and the lower may not look anything like each other. So many of them, the shapes vary and the sounds definitely vary, don't they? If I put a T before an H, it becomes, if I put a C before it, it becomes ch. If I put an S, H can be lots of things. It all depends on what's around it. So the sounds vary and the shapes vary, but there's only one name. So for some of those kids, when, like Amanda was saying, some of our kids need more concrete, start with those letter names. It gives them one thing that they can hang their hat on, right? It's only got one name. So I mentioned that I had that slide, and this is our importance of speech being represented in print imperfectly yet predictably. This is one of my absolute need to knows. We've talked a little bit about the difference between speech and print. I just like this slide of a reminder for us that speech is temporary, print is not. And we're talking about ambiguity, that they both have ambiguity. But in speech, it comes from those homophones. So if I am talking and I use the word sight, I have to rely on the context to help me know which one it is, or the word bear, or the word deer, like Amanda had talked about. I need the context to tell me which one it is. In print, these kinds of words, like it could be wind or wind, read or read, live or live, dove or dove, sow or sewer. Sometimes groups will put other examples in the chat box for me, like content and content. I have to look at the context to figure those out, because they're spelled the same way, either way I pronounce it, but I have a different meaning. So I will say that there are a lot more of these in our language than there are these. And the reason for that, it's easier on our brains as we're reading. I don't have to look at the context to figure out which one it is. I can look at the spelling. It's a much faster process for our brains. These ones, I do have to look at the context to figure out which one it is. So we have many more homophones than we do homographs. Thanks, I love getting some produce. Okay, so because we talked about this last time, though, this is where, I think we talked about this last time. Somebody can give me a heads up or not. When we see printed words, we are seeing way more than just the sounds. And sometimes these different purposes will conflict. I'll give you some examples of that on the next slide. Yes, Nina, can you put the attendance link back in for us, please? So yes, we do see a representation of the sounds, but there are also the spelling patterns. For example, the double L at the end of a single syllable word. There's no need for that, but it's a spelling pattern. And we'll talk about more why later. And that's, so we don't need it for sound there. We also talk about history of words and why we might have that letter there. For example, the be in doubt. We don't say it, but there is a historical reason for that be in doubt. There's a beautiful video on it too, if you look it up. Gina Cook, why there's a be in the word doubt. But it's a historical connection to the Latin-based debutere. Don't need it anymore. We don't know Latin, but at one point they said, oh, we want to make sure people don't forget that that's Latin. Well, nobody speaks Latin anymore. It's also the meaningful parts, those morphemes, prefixes, suffixes, roots, those all these are all what we see when we see a word. It's pretty complex, isn't it? We sometimes see syntax. What kind of grammar is it? What is the meaning of it? There's a lot that goes into what printed words represent. So here are those examples of conflicts I was talking about. If I spelled this first word like it sounds, I would completely lose the connection to the word knowledge, or like to know something. So if I spell this one again, T-O, the way it sounds, I would be struck with 3 different spellings of no. I mean, of 2. Well, here I have 2 different spellings of this one, N-O and K-N-O-W. Here I have 3. And we have to differentiate them visually because it just is easier and faster in our brains. And so if this is a case where I'm going to look at history and I'm going to look at connections, 20, 12, twice. Christopher was talking about the visual meaning earlier, and if we have to think about our learners who they know there's got to be a W in there somewhere, so they might write it like this because they're remembering visually that W is in there. And that's when we have to say, no, remember OW says O like in snow or ow like in cow. We don't want that W to make that other sound of O. We need to stick it in like 12 and 20 and twice. So stick it in because that's related in meaning to it, like it's 20 and twice. And then the last one down at the bottom in jumped. If I spell it the way it sounded, I would have a hard time reading when it comes to meaning because I would lose that ED as that past tense. Could you imagine if we spelled all those the way they sounded with T's on jumped and walked? I'm seeing that smile making, that might be tricky, wouldn't it? If we think our spelling's difficult now, can you imagine if that were the case? Might make reading a lot less efficient because we wouldn't recognize that ED. Every word would be its own little thing. Okay, so let's talk some regularity. Here's a question for you all, an engagement opportunity. What percentage, please put in the chat box, what percentage of everyday English words do you think are irregularly spelled? Just weirdos. Complete weirdos with that. Let's see what's coming in. I love the variety. I always get in this question. We're starting large. Brenda's got 85. We go down to 20, back up to 75. 20s, 80s, we've got so Amanda's our lowest with 6. So our range right now is 80 to 6, it looks like. 85, I think we had. Well, let's take a look. According to Louisa Moats and lots of research on different words.
What did you put? Irregular.
There we go. Sorry about that, Pamela. I didn't meet you. Is that about 50% of our words are what I call the green. You can just look at them and go. If I think about like a stoplight, 1-to-1, symbol, no problem. Another 34%, we could read or write correctly with just one weirdo, like island. The weirdo is one weird piece, one just issue is that S. Let's keep going though. We could correctly spell another 12% if we had additional knowledge, like that double L at the end of words like Phil and Bill and full, and you'll have to help me out with other double L's, double F, there's a pattern here. So I've got some additional knowledge that's contributing to that. Even the W in the word to, I've got some additional knowledge that can help me with that, right? The KN and in no. Really only 4% are truly odd. What we call these really rare patterns. I would call these other 2 groups are yellow. I have to slow down and think. And those really rare patterns are red. Those are my red ones. A fun little video I saw once had her talking like English and Spanish. And when Spanish says, so why is that S an island? She said, it's the throw pillow spelling. There's a really silly reason behind that S. And if you want to do like I do is dive in and find out why on all of those. My biggest recommendation, let me make sure I've got my mouse here, is really fun on the why and all of that. It would be Erica Ockrent's spelling videos. I'll highlight this one. I'll grab the link for you too. She has, let's see, copy URL, fun videos on why things are spelled the way they are. All right. Yeah, it's more regularly than we thought, isn't it? If you just have to think about the reason why, and that's part of the fun is exploring and learning why. Okay, so according to research, we've talked about the importance of things. Seidenberg suggests, agrees that we need to assimilate this knowledge of how print and sound are related. We talked about that. Thanks, Christopher. We need that automatic fluent decoding of isolated words in order to be able to put these words into phrases and units. We really need that automaticity is key. And then, of course, we talked about the fact that letter sound knowledge is central to both phonic decoding and sight word learning. Okay, as we talked though, Christopher, remember we were mentioning these three, that triangle, meaning is the hook. If I give you, everyone, not just Christopher, if I give you all these three with lists of words, and aside from the fact, maybe Nina, you can help me remember to fix the font on number 3, make it the same size. Aside from the fact that they're not all the same size font, which one of these lists do you think you would have the easiest time remembering, reproducing for me on a test?
NFL, IRS, the first one.
Pam says the first one. Megan's saying the first one. I see a few fingers coming up. Everyone's saying the first one. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, it keeps on moving.
Everyone's saying. A lot of people are saying number 1. Why? That was fun, wasn't it? Uh-oh. Are you there? Nina, not at me.
I'm here.
Hello.
Alicia, are you frozen?
Are we in a small group? I'm here.
Yeah, are we in a group?
I think she moved us to small groups.
I
I
think she
think
moved
so
us to
too.
small
All of a
groups.
sudden,
Yes,
it was like,
I
I saw
Yeah.
in the corner,
What is
we
our
went to
topic?
Nina's monitor.
oh,
Nina's now host.
I don't think we're in small groups.
We are not in small.
We're
groups.
not in small groups. There
Yeah.
would be groups of 3. I think she might be having a connection issue, so she'll be coming right back here, I think, in a moment.
okay.
Oh,
In
okay.
the meantime, you can enjoy some private think time, or I can serenade you. No, I'm just kidding.
At some point, I totally thought it was like a teaching strategy where she was just like allowing for wait time so people would just keep answering.
Okay, I think she's coming back on now because I do see her
Okay.
joining as a host. So we'll give her a moment.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, can you share screen?
Give me a yes, I think so.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Using my cell phone, I can run to the office if you don't feel comfortable sharing screen and taking over for me. This is why I have co-hosts, is for when the internet goes out.
Yeah, just give me 1 second to make it a slideshow, I think. 1 second. Sorry.
I'll grab my computer and I'll try and run it. It's a 10-minute drive for me. But I can contribute to the conversation when I drive. I always say technology is great until it's not.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Nina.
You're welcome. Are you seeing it as a slideshow? Because it's loading for me right now.
It was showing a moment ago. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna get shoes. And all right. Yes, you were showing your slideshow, Nina, if you want. Can you
Can you see the
Take over
slideshow
from
now?
11 to- Yes,
Okay.
you're on the Let's Talk regularity. And go ahead to, you want to keep going and go on without me until I can jump in? Oh, you think we're back?
Are we right? Where, sure. Where are we? I just want to make sure I'm in the right spot. Here we are.
Yes, you can go on to the next one. And there we go. We did talk about that. I didn't know that slide was there, so we can just keep going through that. There we go. I remember I mentioned the green, the yellow, and the red. These are examples of those. The green, those are where you have one-to-one connections between the letter. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I allegedly have internet back. We'll see.
You're coming in very clear now.
Okay, well, I'm using my phone. Okay, so I mentioned the one-to-one connections. That's where we have one sound, one letter. And the 1 to 2 is where our kids with dyslexia really struggle, but it's also where we can help them bridge that gap to what they need, because that's where we can help them see these patterns and the regularity. So you see, for example, on the first line, that O could represent 2 different sounds. That's where we have to teach them the flexibility of sounds. It could be the short O like in hopping or the long O like in hoping. And we teach them the conditions under which they would make that sound. Or then the second line is the long A having 3 different spellings. And then the really rare patterns, the UGH does have some regularity, but just not very often. And that's where you see for example, on the first one, it could be like in laugh, tough, and rough, or it could be silent like in do, or bow, or not very many of them, huh? Okay, so a little bit into those, Nina, we go on to the next one and just go ahead and click the whole thing up. And my husband was wrong. We don't have internet, at least I don't down here. So we're using the phone. And since we don't have a lot more time, and by the time I got to the office, we'd be almost. So you'll see there are very few letters that have consistent one-to-one correspondences. I'll be honest, my list there has shrunk from when I first started teaching that class. And actually, I'm looking at that thinking we need to, but if you follow it by an H, it's no longer, it's like in graph. The F I have an asterisk by because it is quite regular with the exception of one word. Does anybody know which one that one word is? One word where it doesn't say, where it does not represent, it represents, there we go, Debbie's got it. Ooh, that's nice, it just pops up on my phone. Debbie's right, that the word of is actually the unstressed off. So off and of used to be written the same way. And then it changed, and it becomes easier once we started writing and reading with our eyes instead of with our ears. We needed to have that differentiation. So the stressed one off has 2 Fs, and the of became just a single F with that. All the rest of this one sound. And you can see down below the other sounds only one way. The
Alicia, can you hear me? Because you're coming up really broken. Is everyone else hearing that, or is it just me?
Yeah, it's
okay. So
you turned into a robot.
Nina, can you take over then? I'll run to the office.
Yes, I'm pulling up the slide deck on my phone as well, guys. So just to kind of get you through this, as Alicia is getting through her to her office. So,
okay.
Yes.
And I'll just kind of contribute orally, but I'm going to let you lead things.
Okay,
And
let's see if I can transition. So here we have some teaching tips here as we talk about sound symbol association. And so we want to think about the movements involved in writing and how they leave motor memory in the sensory motor part of the brain, which helps us recognize letters, which we were just talking about a little bit before when we were describing even how we use some strategies when talking about vocabulary words. We attach motion to them, or where I described working with students with sound lettered parts and using finger motions or dragging down counters, or that website link that was also shared. So great ways to think about movement and how we can engage our students in that process so that it does sit more within their memory and their sensory knowledge of that. So it does help us remember things when we have multiple modes of accessing that same piece of knowledge. So here we're talking about how keywords can unlock sounds. Thinking about words like apple, words that are familiar to our students, and having that opportunity with a visual with them as well, for them to see a representation of something that is common to them, and then to practice that common letter sound for apple and with the ah sound. And then we have box, which has that sound there at the end, and how we would use those to help our students kind of unlock things. So for example, if I was using the word box with my students and I had an opportunity to engage with them with a pocket chart, I would then start having them manipulate the word. So we change the B to an F sound. What do we have? Fox. If we change the F to an S, what do we have now? Socks. So we have an opportunity to use the same word part and engage our students in some additional time. And that's going to unlock that. Next time they see the ox sound, they're going to remember all those chances they were manipulating that piece. Here is a non-example, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to grab it off of the screen right now since I'm doing both pieces. So let me see here if I can stop share, and I'm going to put that link here in one moment here for you all. So just give me a second here to pull that up. Technology is always my favorite part of presenting. So I appreciate everybody being very patient.
Sorry, Nina, I could actually put that in when I get there. They can try it on their own.
You're fine. I got it in. I'm good. I'm managing it. It's okay. So here we have a link in the chat box. And if you want to take a chance and open that, here are some common classroom mistakes hiding in plain sight. And so here you have an opportunity to take a look at an article from the International Dyslexia Association, kind of talking about some of the common mistakes that we engage in and ways that we can kind of use alphabet pictures and charts in a different way for students. So it's a chance to see, can you spot the 5 mistakes in the alphabet picture chart below? And so that's an opportunity for you guys to take a look at that link and let me know if it's not in the chat for you. I'll give everybody a chance just to pull that up as I get the screen share set up for the slide deck. Moving next. And thanks guys for being so patient. And we're pulling it up now. Did anyone find any mistakes in there that they want to share within the chat, or unmute yourself and share out?
Renee's put in 3 of the 5.
Oh, perfect. I can't see the chat right now, so I'm trusting. Oh, there we go. I can see the chat. We have giraffe, xylophone, ice cream, whale, giraffe.
So now the question is why? What's wrong with those ones?
This is Allison. I would say that the rule around the giraffe, if the G is followed by an I, that's what makes it soft. But generally, if we're talking about the more like the hard G sound, I think I would have that be G as opposed to the J sound. And xylophone, the way that I would have that spelled is the KX, like at the end. So the X sound would actually be the box. And the ice cream I would have be the short I sound, like igloo.
Exactly. We're talking about commonality. Can you hear me better now? You're the only person I could see who we were last talking.
Yes, we can hear
Thank
you.
you. It's coming through my phone now and the Bluetooth through my car. Is that the point is that which is the most common? So you're right. G does say like giraffe, and X says this is like xylophone, but how rarely? You know, we're trying to get the kids to notice the regularity. In which case, let's start with the most common. We can skip this one, Lena, in interest of time, because I think what the point on the next one is thinking about with letter names, that letter names can sometimes throw our kids off. Because, for example, you might have somebody writing chicken, HKN, because the H, you hear the ch sound in H. And therefore, when you think about how to write chick, the ch sound, they're going to write it with an H. So can you bring up all those others? We can just take a look at them, and then we'll let people talk about them rather than coming up one at a time. Is think about that in that first 9, notice how the sound of that name, if I say B, I hear B at the beginning of B, I hear D at the beginning of D, etc. In the next line, it's at the end, like L and M and N. And I'm not going to look at the rest of them because I'm looking at the road. Nina, I'll let you talk on that. See if there's anything you want to
add. Yeah, and so thinking about those sounds that are not in the name at all, right? And so what is that order of complexity of these syllables? And so here on the side, we have syllable structure examples. So vowel, consonant, vowel, vowel, consonant. And so here, a way to kind of think about and engage students even in this process of understanding how our letters combined together can make different sounds. Do you want me to move to the next slide?
Yes, please, Nina. So this is the suggested order if your kids are struggling to blend. So notice the last one, we said this is a good order of thinking about which sounds start with the letter sounds at the beginning, like in ball would be easier with the book. But at the same time, if your kids are struggling to blend, let's start with the or the And if you want to pull it click, you'll show those continuous sounds that are those continuous, those constant sounds that you can stretch. Remember last time we talked about the stretchy ones versus the ones that are stops and they're harder for blending those together. Okay. This is a perfect opportunity to take a 2-minute stretch, and I'll be in the office by then, and we could get hopefully I can get us back in at 5 o'clock, so people want to take a quick stretch, and then we'll talk about the yellows, because that's really the hardest part, is those yellow sounds.
All right, we'll see you guys here back at 5 o'clock. Thank you, everybody.
Nina, can you pause the recording?
Yes.
Thank you. So sorry, and I'm so reliant on you on this today. My apologies, everyone.
Resuming recording on us there. Who would like to share out some conversations you had? Hopefully you had a conversation. Thank you, River. Thank you, Maria. Go ahead, River. See, raised hand. Can you?
keep on hitting my mute button incorrectly, sorry. So we just talked about how teaching someone with dyslexia, I work at the high school, so they're older kids. So we kind of talked about what strategies might be good for them, and maybe teaching them the homophones and like weird spelling words, you know, kind of just focusing on that sort of thing might be one strategy.
And teaching them in grouping them by patterns as much as possible will definitely be crucial.
Good tip.
Thank you, River. How about someone else? Someone asked in the chat box about orthographic conventions, and then Megan, you can go next. I'm putting into the chat box a work in progress document. It is not completed, but it is a start with some commonalities and going by most common. I pattern it green and yellow. I don't have any red on that one though. Go ahead, Megan.
I wanted to speak to a little bit of how these are patterns versus rules. I love that kind of terminology because I've got a couple fifth graders who are kind of looking at me, it's like, well, why is it the way it is? And I don't have the answer to that of why is it doing that thing. And so this slide specifically is really helpful. Like, oh, that's why there's a fun E in here. There's an interesting E, or yeah, we don't end a word with a V. There's just some patterns that go into it. So I really appreciate this slide.
Well, and the reason why, so I just have the words don't end in a V. It's actually also a I or U or J. I don't have those ones that I need to add actually. And the reason so I'll just kind of add them in, you know, I and U as well, is it has to do with when our language was originally handwritten before we had the printing press. It was hard to tell a difference between the U and the V and the I at the end. And so the E became just kind of a marker to help us recognize. Here, let me get rid of that for you. Sorry. I wanted to get rid of the blue line for you. There you go. Is that better? So the whole point on why they would put an E there is it helped you read it more clearly. It was just kind of a decorative marker that became a historical marker now for us. Now my kids, I've taught high schooler kids who will actually write this little tiny decorative E, and I'll say, well, what is that? And they're like, well, if there's supposed to be an E, it's there, and otherwise it's decoration. I'm like, okay, well, we have a reason for E's always. It may not be a good reason, like in this way, so it doesn't look like more than one curve, you know, because we can't have the V, J, I, or U at the end, like in blue, BLUE. In the French, it's EU, but in English, we do UE. And again, it's a French influence word. So if you're thinking about why we have those, instead of saying, well, it's English is crazy, there's a reason. It's a historical reason. Like the O in mother is another crazy one. It sounds like a U. Well, mother and dove, it had to do with when our language was handwritten. It was clearer to make it into an O than a U. So, you know, it's, again, the why is so much fun for your kids to explore, and that's the Erica Ockrenter videos are amazing for that. Well, I'm noticing we have only 3 more minutes, so I definitely want to talk a little bit about the red ones, the really rare patterns. Sorry for not having fun animations on this, but this came from because an SLP once said to me that a girl said to her, you know, I know that E says and this is and this is good, and this is t. So what's this gut? Well, this is where we teach the kids as a unit. This word is 8. We can teach them that as a unit, or we can also teach them at the unit EIGH represents A. Now, remember, you can have the kids who say, wait a minute, didn't you just tell me that IGH represents I? We're like, yes, when it's by itself with around consonants around it, like night and fight and bright. But if you put an E before it, it becomes a different unit. And this unit says A, like in sleigh and way, and 8. So you're teaching them, again, those units through that orthographic mapping process. Remember, we talked about back here. And we're teaching them about to look at relationships. Again, this one is no fun without the animation, because I do show the relationship between do and does and done and doing. Okay, I have to do this one full screen because you have to see. I'm just gonna, let me change the sharing. I just won't have to, I won't get to see you. That's fine. You'll get the idea. Sharing, hopefully this will work. Oh. I have way too many Google Chromes open. Let's see if I can get to the right one. Here we go. Is that the right one now? Slide? Thank you. Okay, so with the relationships piece, notice I see people say said is a crazy one. But see how it's the past tense of say, just like paid is the past tense of pay and laid is the past tense of laid. And their kids might say, well, okay, what about stayed? It's like, well, yes, ed is the most common, most sensible way of putting things in the past, but we didn't always. And so these ones are older words. And we've shifted the pronunciation. So hence we have to think about meaning in order to spell it correctly. You know, that said, we hear an eh to it, but it is the past of say. So think of say, said. With the go and do and goes, gone, going. Let's see if I can make this click for us. Here we go. And you help your kids see, they're there. Does is weird, but connect it to goes. Goes, gone, going. Does, click, does, done, doing. So show those relationships so that you can help them see those sound symbol connections. The same thing then with our will and would and shall and should and can and could. Those first two, you see the connections between the L with will and would, those connections and meaning, and the shall and should. And then your kids say, well, wait a minute, can doesn't have an L. You're right. My theory on this is that we already had would and should in our language. And when could came in, they said, well, what do we do with this? Well, it rhymes with would and should, so let's spell it like would and should. So make those connections as often as you can to help them with that spelling. And then I have another one. Let's see what else I have on here is the teach and taught. You've got that ch and the ch there connecting to the gh and taught. So when I say taught, it's weird that we've got that ugh. Yep, that ugh is connecting it to teach, and the ugh and caught is connecting it to the ch and caught. Make those connections as often as they can to make those to help with the memory. So just some other kind of tips here. Just remember we talked about the orthographic mapping, that interactive mapping, going back and forth between letters and sounds. You have to be able to segment the sounds and words and to connect them to their symbols. And it goes through that same thought process, regardless of the transparency of the connection of the sound and symbol. Okay, we already did that one. We'll go through that quickly. And teaching tips. Remember to provide lots and lots of exposures, lots of practice, especially for our kids with dyslexia. They're going to need way more practice than anybody else. They're the ones who are going to need that. It's explicit, show it in patterns. Don't mix them up. Don't confuse them. If you're working on IGH, let's work on a lot of IGH. Later, we're going to do EIGH. Let's make sure we're grouping these into logical patterns for them to make sure that they can recognize those patterns. The multisensory we talked about a lot, making it, saying it, feeling it. Let's start with just a few at a time, going from the easier to the more difficult, from the most common to the less common. One piece that I do want to share with you on this, I did put in the chat box for you that work in progress about the sound symbol connections, but I also want to share with you, did I switch now, Nina? Are you seeing my other knowledge of orthographic conventions doc?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Megan. So in our, back in our ADA compliant handouts, you will see another really useful doc that I would totally be remiss. And this is the keywords for yellow cards. What this shows is going from sound to symbol. It's not opening yet, is it? Didn't I click keywords for yellow cards? Come on. This is going from, so that doc that I put in you, that was going from symbol to sound. This is from, that's not the keywords for yellow cards, people. Here we go. This is going from sound to symbol, in order of commonality. So you notice how the long A sound is most commonly written with that an individual A or A constant E, AI, AY. The EY is really, really rare. So when you say, what am I going to put in the biggest bang for my buck? Are those first top four. The A like in baby, the A constant E like in safe, AI like in rain, AY like in play. Those are your most common ones. So you'll notice we have the vowels on the first slide. The second page are my consonant sounds. Again, that C making the K way more common than the K. The CK comes at the end of a word right after a short vowel. The CH is in Greek words like school. And then the QUE is definitely French. So resources to help you. Thank you, Karen. I'm seeing that it's after 5:30. My apologies for keeping you and all of the juggling we had to do. So we just wanted to give you an opportunity for reflections and to say thank you. Oh, I needed to update that too, didn't I? We'll see you next week. So let me give you an opportunity to give you a reflection, any keywords or thoughts, food for thought. I have a reflections place for us in our Jamboard. In all the juggling, my apologies, we didn't get a chance to talk about this one. We can do this as our homework if you like. Didn't I say we don't do homework? But we can talk about which one of these don't work rather than keeping you later. And we can talk about this the first thing we do next week. There is also then one place if you'd like to put in a reflection, a thought here before leaving. I'll also take a look and see if anything new has come in here. Of the rare words that are rarely spelled, how many of those are considered quote unquote sight words? This is one thing when we get to do this all day, I have people look at those sight words or their adults or the fry and say, how many of those are really green? How many of those are yellow? And how many are really rare? And frankly, the more I learn about words, the fewer I think of those are really rare. I think I'm down to about 4 on the top 100s, maybe even fewer. Depends on how much can you explain it. For example, the O in people, connect it to population. Think about how can you explain some of those weird patterns. So thank you all for being very patient with us tonight and helping us out here. And the juggling that we've had to do. We will see you next time. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to get to our thank you screen, which should be I need to stop clicking, right? There we go. Context and resources. We have a thank you. We will be back hopefully with no tech issues next week. I'm going to go ahead and stop that recording.